Who talks from the table? Um, that's gonna be. I don't know. We're gonna try different things. Today, what am I thinking about? Today, I guess I kind of want to talk about the importance of having male figures in your life. Um, how do I want to go about this? I just starting it. I'm not really thinking about this very much. Um, I guess I'm reading. So I'm reading a book called Wild at Heart, and it was talking about how young men especially need to have uh, like a good relationship with their fathers. Everybody needs a good relationship with their parents in general, but especially young men need to have a relationship with their fathers. And so that got me into kind of a psychological debate with myself about trying to like focus and be like, what is my relationship like with my father? And in what he was saying, he was talking about the fact that like you don't you can't pass on natural femininity um, as a woman needs to pass on like what it means to be a woman to her daughters, and a father has to pass it off to his sons. Like it's not something that can be like your mom. You're like a woman can't make your son a man, and a man can't make your wife your a girl a woman. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, I was talking about that, and so it got me kind of thinking about like psychologically being like, okay, so what was my relationship like with my father? And it started kind of going down a spiral because I was like, well, I've had a relationship with my dad for a long time because a lot of it was um, just a lack of spending time together. My dad grew up in a very different time. I grew up with my dad working all the time because he was a police officer, and so most nights he wasn't there, and so I didn't have that time of feeling this closeness with my dad. I didn't. I think I wanted it, but the issue was that when I was a kid, he was, and during like my like formative growing up time, my dad was also growing into his profession, and he was for the first time seeing all these awful things and these getting into really stressful situations. And so the version of him that I saw was the him that had 4 days of working his butt off in these awful situations and was trying to reel from the stress and the frustrations of his life. So I saw that part. So I saw this like angry side, and then the other part of it was I saw this kind of like lackadaisical, super social, everybody likes him kind of side. And it was hard for me to kind of I couldn't when I was growing up, I couldn't put those two things together because everybody else has this view, this really positive view of my dad, and all his experiences is that he's like this great guy who's super social, super fun, super great. And for me, I had this like the version of my dad is this tired and kind of grumpy and constantly venting and constantly complaining about all this awful stuff. And so it was very hard at a young age, and I kind of shut down because he had that. In addition, I was also this like quiet little guy, and my dad was this loud, big old dude, and so I felt very separate. I wanted to be close, but at the same time, because I didn't see him as a mentor and or even like a father. I saw him as like this guy who's in this house and he keeps yelling, and he's upset. My dad wasn't yelling at me. He was just yelling at the world and the fact that people have terrible behavior, which is completely understandable because there's a lot of bad things in this world. But it definitely created this distance between us that was created, I think, both ways because I couldn't deal with it emotionally at a young age, and he didn't know how to like how do you approach a little kid who's dealing with emotions and won't talk about it because that was the other aspect was I wouldn't talk about it. So you have a kid who's cut off and doesn't want to interact on the surface level, but does deeply. And so I guess based on that, I missed out on a lot of that kind of like maturing into manhood thing for a young age because I didn't have a relationship with my dad because I wasn't close to him. But now that we're older, and basically once I turned like 17, 18, and I finally started seeing my dad as a whole person, because like for a long time I only saw like the him that went to work and wasn't there, or that I was angry at. Because my anger had to be directed somewhere. My frustration at the fact that I wanted to blame somebody for my issues, and unfortunately, as a father, you are the one who will get blamed for everything. I think that when you take on a responsibility of being a parent, of being a father, especially of being a spiritual leader in the household, you take on the responsibility of the issues are yours. Like you do have to bear the consequences. And it's not always your fault. It just is how it goes. And so it wasn't until I got to be like 17, 18, that I started seeing my dad as like a human, as being like he's just this guy who's trying to learn things, and he had a lot of emotions to deal with. Like it's hard when you're faced with this stress. And he was trying his best and tried to come to all my different sporting events and all my games and stuff, but that stuff mattered because that stuff mattered to him growing up, that his parents were there. But to me, that wasn't what I wanted. And so we had this kind of disconnect. And it wasn't until later that I was like, I just wanted you to like see that I had feelings. I didn't care that you were at my games. It doesn't matter. That kind of stuff didn't matter to me. It mattered to you, but it didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was that I wanted you to feel connected, and I wanted to feel connected to you, or feel like I could trust you, or that you would accept me for being a human, accept my imperfections. And I didn't feel that way. And so it's taken a long time to get past that. And also to get to a point where I'm like, okay, what does it mean to be a man, and what does it mean to live well? And seeing the way that he's lived, and getting to have deeper conversations with him that are um, more based and more faith based, really an improvement on both of our parts of especially trying to be more spiritually led and trying to be more like, okay, let's talk about the Bible. We say that it's the most important thing in our lives, but we're not freaking doing it. So let's make it important. Let's talk about it, not like just because it may not be the most like exciting or funny conversations. If we're saying it's the most important thing, which it should be, we gotta act accordingly. We gotta say, you know what, it is. So let's talk about it. Let's not pretend that this faith thing is just something that can be swept under the rug. And so that's been a huge transformation, I think, and growth for the both of us. I think to finally seeing my dad in all the aspects, and I think that comes with just growing up with any parent. Seeing my mom being honest about certain issues, seeing my dad be honest about certain issues that they had, that they didn't feel comfortable talking about when we were growing up because they didn't want us to see them in a certain light. But at the same time, it's like if you're lying to your kids, then they are going to think that you're a liar. Like the thing is, most of us know that people are lying to us, but we just pretend that we don't think they are. You know what I mean? We just go, okay, whatever you want to tell me right now. And so I guess getting back on track, it's been really cool over the past number of years to get to see my dad in a real form, as like a truly, from like, I guess, man to man more so, of like what it means to work hard, what it means to like you're kind of just doing your best, what it means to have different interests, seeing all the similarities that we have personality wise, of especially with growing in my own confidence. And I used to take his confidence as arrogance because I was so self-loathing, and then I was like, oh wow, you're not a narcissist. You're just somebody with a lot of confidence that I didn't have, and I was jealous that you had it and I didn't. And so taking that into account has been a crazy transformation, and really helped me see like, oh, that, wow. And then also like me growing up as a little nerd, and my dad being this big old bodybuilder man, me being like, well, we have nothing in common. But my dad's a total nerd. He just doesn't look like it. He doesn't always talk about it, but you get him started talking about sports or biology or wolf facts or Viking history. Oh, the man is a total nerd. And so it's like there were things hidden in, and we like talking about things that are kind of philosophical and having deep conversations and being able to. He's a very emotional and empathetic person. It's just that I didn't see that growing up. I saw this like this I want to be a tough guy exterior. And while that's important to have, it's important to step up and be strong. Not saying that that's bad. What I'm saying though is that if your kids don't know that you have feelings or that you are going through a rough time or that you feel things for them, that you are empathetic towards them, that you when they hurt, you hurt, um, then you're missing out on something. But that's been something that we've been able to grow through, and I feel so much closer to my dad now that I'm like, wow, you're just a dude doing dude things. Like you say awkward things with your friends. You're an awkward nerd, and you know we're a lot more alike personality wise than I gave us credit. Maybe we go about it in different ways, but we have the same stubborn brain, we have the same caring heart, we have the same ideas. You know, we want the best for people, but the only difference is you've been through more life than I have, and you've been seen some awful things, and you've seen how certain things in the world work, and so yeah, what I guess so that's been just a cool thing. So I guess based on this rant, what I'm gonna say to kind of close the idea is the importance of fathers and sons, and seeing that like as a son, seeing that your dad is not necessarily that he's just a dude. He really is just another guy, and um, understanding that like when you're younger, you probably missed things, or if you are younger, you probably are missing things that he's not saying because he wants to be a tough guy because he doesn't think doesn't want to burden you, or he doesn't feel like he can talk about it with you, or that you would understand. Um, and I guess to what I'd say about that is just be patient and keep holding on to for an opportunity, or take those opportunities. Try because I never even tried. I was like, me and my dad were just completely different. We'll never be alike. He's just this big man, and I'm just this awkward nerd. And the thing was, neither of those were fully true. Neither of those opinions about me or him were true. It was just my assumption, and so um, there's that. And I think to fathers, it's important to be honest and vulnerable with, especially with your sons, and going, okay, I want to help raise you. I want to be part of your life, and not just the part of your life that you think is important or that you want to connect with, but when you become a father, you take on the responsibility that not everything is going to be your way. Actually, you're really putting yourself last. You're saying my kids' ways are there. So that means that you got to give up having this high-powered job because you're like, this is what my kids care about. It probably isn't. So what do you want your kids to remember? That you weren't home? No. You want your kids to remember that you were there. So you may have to make a sacrifice, and that may look different, but you have to be able to evaluate that and get some advice from your own parents, from other men who are going to be like, yeah, let's do the freaking thing. Um, but yeah, I think there's an importance to looking at your kids and saying, you know what, I want to be able to give you attention and love you in the way that you can feel, and the way that you can recognize. And maybe you won't recognize it now, but maybe you'll recognize it later. Because I know I do. Now I'm like, wow, I really do. I'm very lucky that my dad was at all my sporting events, even though I didn't really want him there because it made me feel pressured. But that's a whole other thing. That's parental expectation and stuff. But yeah, I guess that's kind of my little speech for the day. Is you're a lot that every son needs his father, and it's a growing thing. You're gonna have difficulties, and it's important that you're teaching that fathers are teaching their sons things, and that sons were willing to listen, and also willing to teach our dads things that maybe, and talk to them in ways that maybe we're like, he's not going to be interested, or he's going to think that I'm stupid for being interested in D&D or in some lacrosse or whatever, in writing and drawing and working out in a certain way and traveling and adventuring and hiking 14 or all sorts of stuff. So just giving fathers and sons the benefit of the doubt and saying God brought us together, And there's a reason why fathers and sons, up until only past 100 years or so, were always tied at the hip. It's because they were forced to be together. So give them a chance. Give your kids a chance and give your parents a chance. It also goes for women too. Is like give your moms a chance. Give your daughters a chance. It may not make sense right now. You may not. A lot of it too is you don't want to you don't want to watch your kids make the same mistakes that you do, but you also have to realize that like your kids are gonna make the same mistakes that you do because we're you. You know what I mean? Like you made us. We have the same personality and this a lot of the same people. You're a lot like your kids, and your kids are a lot like you. So they're probably gonna make the same mistakes. You can only hope that they don't make as bad of mistakes or different ones. But they're gonna make mistakes, and perfection isn't gonna happen, and that's okay. You're not gonna have a perfect son. You're not gonna have a perfect daughter. You're just gonna have your son or daughter that you love. You know, that's what God made us. God made us, and He knew from the beginning that we were gonna be whack, and He still kept with it. When He made Adam, He was like, "This one's going to end up in trouble." When He made Eve, He was like, "This one's also gonna make these two are gonna make a whole lot of trouble for me." But guess what? I'm gonna do it anyway, and that's a love. And in addition, I'm gonna make this is gonna be a really long talk, but I feel like talking this long, so why not? It was interesting this week because I was reading my Bible and it's always been like almost a weird feeling. I've always felt weird about like that where it's but God sent His one and only Son, and it always kind of made me a little bit uncomfortable, being like, how can it be loving to send your son for somebody else? Like, I can see how it's loving to the other people that, like, you'd sacrifice yourself, but you'd be willing to sacrifice the person that you love for the entire world. But then it feels like, it felt a lot of the time, it felt very like God was like, take him. I'm not going to sacrifice myself, but I can sacrifice him. And so I was praying about it, and I was like, God, I need you to show me. And then I was just sitting there, and I was like, give me a feeling. And then it gave me the image of wartime, which we always in a wartime. Yes, the evil forces. Which it sounds like I try to make it silly, but it is like there is evil forces. But it's more fun to call them like, to make it seem more silly so that it seems less intense and scary and real. But then I pictured war times, and I think about, imagine a parent. Imagine being a parent during World War II. Okay, I picture it like this 1940s house. You're sitting at the dinner table with your son. Your like 18-year-old son. I guess he was 30, but imagine he's 18. And you as a father know that your son is the only one who can save the entire world. He's going to end the war. The war is going to be done. But you know that the second that he goes out there, that once he gets shot, then everything will be fixed. Then everything's going to be okay. The second he goes out that door, that he goes off to war, that he's gonna die. And that's heartbreaking. Because to be a parent and to imagine your kid's gonna die, knowing they're gonna die, and knowing that there's no other way, there is no other plan. This is your only hope. You've thought of everything, every other option, and there is no other option. And knowing that your son, if he goes out there, he's going to die. But he's gonna save the world. And the thing is, he wants to do it. It's not this like, he doesn't want to. He's not like, oh, this is awful. Don't make me do this. I don't want to do it. He didn't really want to, but while, the human part of him, part of Jesus didn't really want to. I mean, read about it in the Garden of Gethsemane, but the fact that he's like, I have to. Because he loves the people just as much. Imagine separating somebody, and it's not just like a son, but it's his only son, his everything, a part of him, and he knows that For a time, he's going to be completely separate from his son. That he won't get to. That imagine like he won't even have a memory. That the second he dies, because I'm imagining like, because God had to separate himself from. That Jesus was separate from God in those moments while he was experiencing sin on the cross. That he was experiencing sin on the cross. He had to literally be separated from God, be separate from the part of himself that has been a whole for eternity. And he's separating himself. And so imagine that every memory you have with him is gone in that moment. And not only that, but you have to be the one to kill him. You have to be the one to punish your son. Because you're the only one who can. And he's the only one who can. And it's the only thing that's going to save the world. And every aspect of you, and in those moments, you're not going to be able to remember who he is. All you can see is just plain evil, and you have to fight it. And you have to be willing to say, it'll only be for a short time that I won't get to see you. And I'll have to see this pain, and my heart will break because I won't get to be with you for this moment. And that I have to do this thing that is so painful and so awful to me. It breaks my heart, it breaks your heart. And it feels like I'll never be able to forgive myself or forgive anybody else. But this will be this is what's going to save everybody. This is what's going to end this war. This is what end all be all. This is the only way. And to be willing to do that, despite every aspect of you, knowing that you have all the power to do everything. You could do you could just end the war. You wouldn't have to. But unfortunately, if you end the war, everybody else dies. Everybody else that has ever lived, that ever will live, has to die if you don't do this. The one person who you love the most. And that, when I started thinking about it like that there's this war, and you have to, and that God had to give him. It isn't necessarily like he gave his one and only son. It's not, it wasn't like, take it. It was more like, allow it. And it was like, it isn't necessarily giving as in take this gift. It partially, but when he gives his one and only son, he's giving up part of himself. He's allowing his son to do what must be done. He's allowing himself to do what must be done. Despite the emotional and personal damage that it may feel. Because sometimes I feel like God doesn't have emotions, but he does. We're made in his image, and so God has emotions. And multiple times in the Bible, he talks about different feelings God has, so clearly he does, but sometimes it's easy to imagine that God doesn't, because when we think of like perfection, this like individual, this being who we can't see and can't talk to, we can talk to, but you know what I mean. He's not sitting at my dinner table, but it's just heartbreaking when I picture that, like that war image of being like, you're the only one who can save these people. There's no other way. There's no other way. But I'll be with you soon. And not only that, but he has to be the one to do it. He has to be the one to say goodbye and watch the pain in his son's face. Like, it's brutal that he would not only allow himself, but he knew that this was the only way. And it's hard. I mean, it's a heavy thing, and it seems. There are definitely times in the past where I've been like, it seems whack, and it's like, why couldn't God have done it any other way? And the thing is, though, I'm not God, so I don't know. I don't know everything. I don't know why God made the world the way it is and all the decisions, but I do know that I believe what the Bible says is true about it, and that's a beautiful thing. And now they get to be together forever. They got to go through something that God himself went through, something awful. God's heart is broken so many times for every person that's ever lived, and His own Son, and it's and forever now. Though they got to be together, and that pain is brought them closer, which is crazy. And same way that any parent gets closer to their kids after something horrible happens. So yeah. Anyways, that was a lot of tangents and a lot of directions. I don't know if that made any sense, but it made sense to me. I hope you have a lovely day, lovely time. And until next time.